The faith of 10,000 flames. What is that like? What does that mean? That is what we are here to unpack, to look at, and to understand. Because we stand here today on this 4th day of January. We have 361 days to go. And I know that when we hit midnight the other night, going from the 31st to the 1st, I sort of heard this collective flushing sound as we released 2025 for good reason. And we are here to know that there is something greater. So as we get started here, let's just make sure we're working. Let's make a way, Lord. There it is. All right. My intention for this morning is to touch upon some of the foundational ideas of this teaching of ours, also known as religious science, Centers for Spiritual Living. We are part of the New Thought designation, and that means that if you are to look at some of the ideas that even Plato and Socrates, but then look at Emerson and Mary Baker Eddy and Emma Curtis Hopkins, they all had a new thought about who we are as divine beings, and who we are and how we are to live as divine beings, how that is to show up, how we are to draw from that in our lives. And that was a radically new idea when Emerson was alive, and that was over 150 years ago. That's a radically new idea today, I think, in many, many circles. And yet that is something that we are being called to look at and to understand. So the first 4 chapters of our textbook, the Science of Mind textbook, are all about this understanding of the thing itself. And in fact, we're going to be talking about all of them. This week, I'm talking about the thing itself, meaning this presence, this infinite power in which we live and move and have our being. And by the way, it lives and moves and has its being in, as, and through us. Next week, we talk about the way it works. How does this principle, this presence work? And then the 3rd week of January is what it does. What it does. Here's the thing about God. God doesn't forget to rain. God doesn't forget to shine the sun. God doesn't forget to keep the mountains where the mountains go and the oceans where the oceans go. God doesn't forget to grow hair on your head, fingernails on your hand. That is that presence that we were talking about. Not a God of personality. That's a few blocks down in another building. We don't do that here. We are talking about that infinite loving presence. And then finally on January 28th, we're going to explore the 4th chapter, how to use it. And using this principle, how do we personalize God? How do we personalize that power and that expression? So there used to be a tradition in our teaching that we'd use the first 4 Sundays of the year in January to teach those first 4 chapters. I started doing it again last year because I really missed just being re-anchored and re-grounded. And I know that many of you have probably been here for a year or longer, or a week or longer, and you're wondering, well, wait a minute, I need to know more about this. You know, it's kind of pretty. They seem to have it down with the Christmas trees, and you know, that's a nice yard out there. But what about what is this idea that we're talking about? By the way, I feel my other mic dangling back here, so just bear with me. It's an accessory. It's a fashion statement. So what we hear all the time in this teaching is there is a power for good in the universe, and we can use it. There is a power for good. Yet if we stop there, we miss the real message. And that is that you and I are so much more than we think we are, and we are here to personalize and to use that power for good. And again, Emerson, what lies behind you, what lies in front of you, pales in comparison to what lies inside of you. Now, if you have never heard that, no one ever told you, or you didn't grow up with that, then this might sound like really, really new information. Ta-da! That's what we teach here. So maybe, and I'm going to say, I think most of us have been raised to regard life and our experiences in terms of our reactions, our limitations, our fears, or how we think life occurs. So the spiritual truth I believe that we are always being called to consider, though, is what Emerson said, that we are more. We are more. And so what I want you to know is that this great adventure we call life, we are on a journey. We are on a journey. And the theme this year for this center is the spiritual journey. And so we begin this journey with prepping ourselves with some awareness, with some knowledge, and some actual tools so that we can walk this journey. And, you know, there's an ancient fable that Ernest Holmes, who founded this teaching, liked to share sometimes. And it goes like this. When the gods created man and woman, so we're just going to use the non-gender inclusive man, and just extend your minds and know that this is old. This is an old idea. When the gods created man as a divine being, they debated where to hide his divinity. Of course, you know, if it were a woman, she'd find it right away. But that's a different... After rejecting the earth, because the God said, well, they'll eventually explore the whole earth. The sea, well, you know, sometimes they're going to get down to the bottom of the sea. They'll find it. And the sky, well, at some point, they'll probably reach up there, too. They decided to hide it where we would never find it, within ourselves. Within ourselves. And so this is the day that we begin the greatest journey of all, the spiritual journey. And what I'm really enjoying about this is that there is a great metaphor taking place right now. And it is that there are monks who are walking for peace. They started in Fort Worth, Texas. They are walking along with Aloka, their dog. The word means light. They are walking all the way to Washington, D.C. with an intention for peace. It is the journey. So while they are metaphorically doing that journey on the outside, trust me, they did a great journey, and they continue to do that great journey on the inside, because you cannot bring something to somebody that you don't already possess. You can't give something to someone that you don't already have. And if you don't have peace, you cannot extend peace. And so that is what we practice here. So I'll tell you, as we are going on this journey for the 12 months of 2026, this journey, we'll be talking about it every month. And I know that on the way, we're going to encounter some challenges, or like we like to call them growth opportunities when we're in our denial stage. Detours, distractions. We're going to have discoveries. There will be gifts and treasures. We're going to learn spiritual navigation. Spiritual navigation. We're going to learn deep listening. And we're going to learn ways to grow in faith, in love, and inner peace. So today, this thing that we are talking about is the thing itself. Because this journey that we are on takes place within a fuller context than just our personal experiences and our identities, right? It takes place within us, around us, as us, and through us. And that fuller context is God. So, one of my intentions is that we all mature around the word God. Because there may be a number of us who grew up in a church or a religion or a teaching that weaponized God. God did not do that to you. God as that presence, that loving power. For me, that's the word that works. It does not have to be that word for you. But what I would like you to do is be able to understand that this word has many, many different names, this idea. The thing itself is the power behind all creation. It is known by many names. In Judaism, it's Yahweh. Christianity, it's God, or in the Western world. In Islam, it's Allah. Hinduism, Atman. Taoism, it's the Tao. Indigenous earth-based cultures often call it Great Spirit. The thing itself is all of that, because all of those are it. Capital I-T. Many paths, one destination. Many paths, one destination. That's the thing. There are so many paths to God and to unfoldment, and not God out here, but within, because there are so many of us here. We all have our own journey to travel. So Ernest Holmes wrote the Declaration of Principles. And as you can see, this is just part of it. We believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, the living Spirit Almighty, one, indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. This one manifests itself in and through all creation, but it is not absorbed by its creation. The manifest universe is the body of God. It is the logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-knowingness of God. Now, it's interesting, as I was reading that and just glancing up, there are a number of you who I know have been in this teaching for a long time, and I saw some amazing looks of just peace and serenity, because you've heard these words before. When I first joined this teaching many years ago, that was part of what we said. We stood and recited. We didn't memorize. I was only 11. I'm not that. And now at this age, I certainly don't want to memorize all of it. But we would read, and that was part of what we would read. It's a statement of belief. And so as I was just looking out and I'm seeing there's some looks of familiar, warm smiles of, yes, it's good to hear that again. It's good to hear that again. So this presence, this power, this creative source is that which has always been, will always be, and is present here and now. Right here and right now. It does not have a favorite person. It doesn't have a favorite football team. It doesn't care about the Rose Bowl, nor does it have a favorite religion or country. It loves all things, all people, all creation unconditionally, because all creation comes as an expression of that one infinite source. Why would there be favorites? Why would there be favorites? And all of us, each of us loved so powerfully as if we are the favorite, God's favorite. I want you to all just imagine that God has a picture of you on his refrigerator or her refrigerator, because you are that beloved. You are that beloved. Now, we may also call it, as Ernest did, the living Spirit Almighty. You might call it light. You might call it life, infinite mind. But this living Spirit Almighty works for me. And what I know is it embraces and includes what we might consider to be two selves, right? So we have two selves. We have that lowercase, the self that's in the world. Patanjali called that the false self, whether that's false or not, but consider it to be that ego self, the self that's in the world. The small self is living by a personality that has been constructed in reaction to experience, to fear, and comparison. That sound familiar? You can see the image I created here of this wilting flower, this tiny wilting, because that's what happens. We take in what somebody else has said or what's going on in the world. This small self is entangled in past regrets and future anxieties. Living there permanently is not the most fun place to be, right? It is an ego-seeking, external, validation-based and approval-based part of us. Now, there's nothing bad about the false self. It's just incomplete. It's just incomplete. And yet, at the same time, we have this divine self which encompasses that. And you can see there's all of this glory shining through with the divine self. And Ernest Holmes wrote that this spirit is the power that knows itself, and it knows itself through you and through me. It expresses through you and through me. God needs a way to express in the world, okay? Just as an idea is not very tenable, is not very useful. However, this idea of creation and love and joy and humor and whimsy and fun, we seem to have forgotten fun. And I think that it's really important that we remember fun. This is all, we are here for all of that. God can't do it without us as the body, as the way God shows up in the world, as the way light shows up in the world, as the way Allah shows up in the world, as the way the Tao shows up in the world. This is who and what we are. This thing, this meat suit, is a house. It's a temporary house. And that divine self of you existed before it moved into this house in gestation in somebody's womb for 9 months, and it will continue to go on after it moves beyond this physical house It is an eternal self. This self, in his essay, Self-Reliance, Ralph Waldo Emerson called it the aboriginal self, the true I am. The I am. And the self is your point of consciousness. It is where you meet the one infinite mind. It embraces all that you are, but it knows you as so much more than you as that person with fear, with limitations, with a history. It knows you as so much more. You as yourself, that divine self, are perfect, you are complete, and you are absolutely eternally connected to Source. You are Source in expression. This is perhaps the most important point that any of us can learn, the most important lesson for any sacred teaching, any wisdom teaching, is to know we are fully connected in and as Source. Because all of the issues that we have, all the pain that we experience, all of the frustration come from a perception that we are separate from Source, that we are separate from the divine. We're not worthy of being connected with that. Or I was listening to something today, and it really struck me that we wait to know about our divinity and our connection. We think that God has to come to us. God has to come to us. God has to come to us. I think that we are tired of waiting for God to come to us. But I know that we are much more tired of waiting for us to come to a realization of who we are. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's a lot of energy to wait for our own awakening. And yet that awakening is within our own power and choice. Yes. Ernest Holmes wrote this: I am a center in the divine mind, a point of God-conscious life, truth, and action. That gives me chills. I am a center in the divine mind. I am a center in that. So in this spiritual journey that we are on, you are not discovering something new. You are remembering. This is the divine remembering what has always been true about you. And more than that, you are revealing it. You are revealing your divine and real self. This is that divine urge, that divine discontent that has always been tapping on your shoulders, and it tries to get our attention. But I think that we get so distracted by our opinions of what life isn't and what we think it should be, or how life shows up, or the things that happen out in the world, that we seldom take time to let life reveal to us what and who we actually are as divine beings. So your divine self, you are eternal, you are united with the whole, and you are creative and self-directing. Now that's very intellectual crap, isn't it? So let's come into let's own that. You didn't begin at birth. You are eternal. You emerge from the infinite. Your body may change, but that self, that capital S self, will always remain. Never the spirit was born, never shall it cease to be. You are united with the whole. There is one infinite mind, which of necessity includes all that is. Whether it be the intelligence in us, the life in an animal, or the invisible presence, it's all God. It's all God. Walter Starkey wrote this wonderful book. It's all God, the fertilizer and the flowers. The fertilizer, use what word you like, and the flowers. It's all still God. When we are united with the whole, that means that we are not separate from God, but we are expressing as God. Whoa, did you notice I did not get struck by lightning when I said that? I and the Father are one. I and the Source are one. Not two things united, but one, the capital O-N-E, expressing through you. It's like Rumi said, basically, the ocean is in the drop and the drop is in the ocean. You can't separate one from the other. Do you know that if you test a drop of your blood, if the test is done, say, for, I don't know, iron, that little drop of blood and the amount of iron will tell the doctors exactly what the percentage is of iron throughout your entire body. That little drop of blood. It has all of your DNA. It has all of your information. That is the same thing about us. We are drops of God. Everything true about God is true about us, and it is right here and right now. We are so much more than we think we are, and we are creative and self-directing. We are creative. That is the third thing to know about this divine self. We have volition, we have choice, we have creative power. Glory, hallelujah. We have creative power. Your word has power because it is spoken through the spiritual presence, the activity, and the law that is this universe. Your word has power. Now, if you did not know that, I really want you to get that now, because those words that we speak, those thoughts that we think, are creating our lives. Whatever is going on in here is showing up out here as a mirror, as a reflection, which means that we can proactively decide to choose something else to create from. Have a different thought, have a different word, have a different vision, have a different image, have a different knowing of ourselves. All of that so that we can have a different experience in life. Does that make sense? Okay. I think that there is a thing about us that we forgot. We forgot who we were. We forgot who we are. It's as if we came onto the planet and we suddenly went blonde or unconscious. And I'm blonde, I can say that. I mean, I am today anyway. But we forgot. We forgot. There's a divine forgetting, and or not the divine remembering happens, but there is that earthly forgetting, and that's what we want to move past. We want to rise above it. So there is a journey that must take place, as I said, and like the prodigal of old, we must make the great discovery for ourselves, discovering who we are, what we are, and that we are here for this great adventure, this expression. The path of awakening, by the way, is a long game. This is not a sprint. It is a long game, because there will be times when we awaken and then we forget and go back to sleep. We forget and go back to sleep. Then we awake for a bit and we're, oh, this is really good. I like that. I see the light, and there we go again. Learning to recognize the language of the self in order to truly be present and allow our spiritual journey to happen requires a couple of tools. Now, these are the ones that I want you to take with you. Learn to trust your inner voice. Trust that inner voice. Give it a chance. The more you listen, the more it will be there for you. Second, you must speak your word with authority. You're already thinking with authority. You're thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be late, or it's going to rain, it's going to be miserable, or this is going to happen. What if you chose to not do it that way, but to instead, with authority, proclaim, I am a being of creative spirit. I am limitless. I demand to see the blessing in all of this. That's some proud, prime, powerful authority. And finally, to all begin to live from cause, not effect. In other words, we can play duck and cover in response to CNN, NBC, and Fox News, or we can choose to be proactive, start our day first by saying, I tune in, I connect to the broadcast that counts, and that's the one from my very soul. Because having to react constantly to the news we hear, to the stuff that goes on, does not empower us to make changes in the world. And yes, there are changes that are being called for, without a doubt. We're not here to just sit and passively contemplate the lint in our navels in order to have a life and say it's all fine, it's all fine. It's not all fine. In fact, I'm going to jump ahead here. Because, as I said, you are here to express God, and I'm going to move. Your purpose is not to find God, but to express God where you are. Y'all got that? Okay. So, this is from my friend Esther Nicholson. Some of you know. I think every new year brings me to a point of contemplation and considering a deeper understanding of life in this teaching. And here's where I am now. I think that we're all in a collective hangover still. Now, whether you went out on New Year's and you had a lot to drink or you drugged or whatever, that's not what I'm talking about. That's on you. But this is the hangover of beliefs from the past. We are all in a collective hangover of beliefs from the past. The beliefs might be, I'm not good enough. There isn't enough to go around, or why would I ever think I'm worthy of love? That's a hangover. That's a hangover. The hangover probably includes more beliefs and ideas, not just about yourself, but about God, religion, sin, suffering, fears about the survival of our democracy, our country, our planet, all of that. And Esther, and she'll be back at some point. I know some of you know Esther, and she is just one of my most powerful friends, and she's like a sister. She's the one that introduced Reverend Skip and me, and we will always hold her in high esteem and blame. So, but she wrote this in one of her blogs the other day. Yes, horrible things are happening in the world. Yes, horrible things may have happened to you. Yes, life can seem unkind and unfair. But here's the real deal. If you hold the world responsible for your spiritual, psychological, physical, and financial bondage, paradoxically, you must hold it accountable for your freedom. Oh, damn. Let me say it in a different way. When you hold the world responsible for your spiritual, psychological, physical, and financial bondage, you also do hold it accountable for your freedom. And that means if the world is in charge of your limitation and your problems, then the world is the only way that you will be free from those problems. I'm sorry, not here, not now. Amen. Not for me. Amen. We have agency. We have choice. It is not the world. All the power for change is an internal transformation. It's an internal transformation. It has to happen before our experience of the world can change. Now, the world will do what it does. And yes, we do get to affect change there. But we want to affect change from a place of love, of wholeness, of knowing who we are, and knowing that we are fully connected to Source, and that we are not victims of somebody else's misperception or choices or limitation. And that's truth. That's spiritual law. And Esther writes this: stop wasting time waiting for the world to change. A new world awaits you right where you are. That's what this is about. Now, changing into a new world, that's a human construct of going from one year to the next. However, the energy around a new year is ripe. It's strong, it's profound, and we get to draw on that. We get to use it to move into different ways of seeing ourselves, of experiencing ourselves, and therefore experiencing the world, and that's where the world begins to shift. So here's the thing. As we step boldly into this year, and I do mean boldly, I'm done with cowering. I really don't want to have any more inclinations of curling up in a fetal position with all the chocolate in the house. It's not working. It doesn't change anything. So as we step boldly into this year, a year which has never been before and will never be again, you and I get to choose daily, sometimes hour by hour, to reveal and to remember who and what we are. We are divine creations of spirit. We are divine creations of spirit. And so, in fact, let us step as boldly as the monks are walking, as they are stepping. Let's walk as they do. They're stepping into and walking this journey of peace. And as I said at the beginning of my talk, they are the metaphor out there for what we must do in here. We can walk with them. First, we must walk within. You and I, by the way, are the reason they walk. Our children are the reason they walk. Our children's children are the reason they walk. And they are the reason we are able to declare with courage, intention, and yes, boldness that we are here for a greater purpose. We are here to express God. So may we stay inspired. May we absolutely be the activity of bold compassion and peace in all that we say and do. And before we finish, I have an affirmation that came from Ernest Holmes, and I'd like for you to say it with me. I am a center in the divine mind. I am conscious of my true nature as a perfect idea in the mind of God. The same intelligence that governs the stars, that causes the sun to rise, that holds planets in their orbits, this intelligence is my intelligence. I am guided by it. I am sustained by it. I am it, expressing as me. Now, if these principles are kind of catching your attention and you are interested in more, know that we have a lot going on. I am starting a class on Tuesday. It's a lunch and learn, and it's a very reasonable experience. It's $75 for 4 Tuesdays or $20 just for a drop-in. And it's a class about living an empowered life and really, really moving into your ultimate purpose. I know that Reverend Skip is starting a class soon. I will be teaching a foundations class, which gives you all of what I talked about in a big context, so you can begin to actually make those changes in how you think and clear and cleanse those perceptions so that you have a lens of inspiration and not a lens of suspicion or fear or limitation. At the very least, I invite you to carry these principles with you. Carry these ideas with you. In fact, I will be putting a prayer for 2026 that one of my girlfriends wrote, and it's going to be out on the welcome table. And it is one of those things that you can read daily to empower you and to remind you that you are a gift from God. You are here as the divine. You aren't a mistake. None of us is a mistake. We are here as the divine intention of creation itself. Ernest Holmes wrote, "Hidden away in the inner nature of the real man is the law of his life, or real woman, the law of her life. And someday he will discover it and consciously make use of it. He will heal himself, make himself happy and prosperous, and will live in an entirely different world, for he will have discovered that life is from within and not from without." That day is today. That discovery is now. You are that which you seek, and so it is. All right, let's turn within. I invite you to just breathe. Know that at the deepest level, at that level of heart, that which is yours to know and to absorb is there, and that which is not is easily released. For the wisdom that you seek is already within you. And what a gift it is to know that that wisdom is personalizing itself by means of you, for you, as you, and that all life, right here and right now, is seeking to support you in the most wonderful experience of love, of peace possible. I know that this church is a blessing, and I know that we are blessed simply by being together. What a joy it is to know that we carry this blessing, that we are this blessing. In fact, we bless all churches, all paths to God, all mosques, temples, ashrams, synagogues, cathedrals, wherever people gather. We know that the light shines brighter and that the flame, the 10,000 flames of peace are glowing brightly. We seek to know ourselves as being part of that light. And we surround this planet now with compassion, with peace, with love, with understanding. From the farthest reaches of this globe, be it the Antarctic, be it Venezuela, be it Russia, be it Bakersfield, we know that all life is connected, that we are all connected in the mind, the heart, and the love, the presence, and the power of God. We are grateful for that. And in that knowing, we simply say, and so it is, and then together we say, Amen.